Hello everyone, and welcome to the From Vaccine to Vaccination webinar series taking place all this week. My name is Rola Kaakeh, and I'm the CEO of Salus Vitae Group, and I'll be the host for the event. Now, at this point in time, we're all waiting on the COVID-19 vaccine. Here in the United States, the FDA is currently meeting to answer the question as to whether the benefits of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine outweighs its risk for those individuals 16 years and older. So it's ongoing as we speak. Now, the speed at which the vaccine clinical trials in general, the speed at which the vaccine clinical trials have been conducted, reviewed, and granted emergency use authorization and approved across the world is unmatched in history. It's really unlike anything we've seen before. But now an enormous challenge awaits us. It is the distribution and administration of the vaccine. We are not only focusing on the vaccine, but on the vaccination process. So many of us have shifted our focus from vaccine to vaccination. Now, as part of this week-long series, we're very lucky to have 6 leaders from across various settings share their experiences, explore recommendations, and propose actionable strategies as we prepare for the deployment of the COVID-19 vaccine. These leaders come to us with diverse backgrounds and expertise. We had a health economist on Monday. We have various vaccination experts. We have executives of global organizations representing millions of pharmacists. We had a dean of the School of Public Health, as well as a dean of a School of Pharmacy. We also have an informatics professional that brings in their perspective, as well as an on-the-ground clinician implementing the strategies discussed. Now today, over the course of an hour, we're gonna ask our guest speaker a number of questions. I'm going to start, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience questions. So please, if you have any question at any point, please submit them in the Q&A box, and we'll address them towards the end of the conversation. We also encourage you both during and after the event to post any takeaways that you have in the Q&A box and on various social media platforms and tag us at Salus Vitae Group. We'd love to hear how you benefited from these conversations and the experiences shared by our distinguished speakers, but we also hope to pass those along to as many people as possible. Now, the session will be recorded and is available for replay after the event. So if you missed the other 3, the recordings are still going to come out. So I do encourage you to listen to them because each has provided a very unique perspective to the vaccination process. But today, I'm very pleased to welcome and to introduce and welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Denise Scarpelli. Dr. Scarpelli is the Executive Director of Ambulatory Pharmacy and Business Development at the University of Chicago since 2017. Previously, she had many leadership roles at Walgreens, leading pharmacy operations in Chicago for over 20 years. She is currently the chair of the Illinois Board of Pharmacy and on the Dean's Advisory Board for Midwestern College of Pharmacy. Denise also serves as the chair of ASHP, Section of Specialty Pharmacy Practitioners, Section Advisory Group on Business Development. She earned her Doctorate of Pharmacy from the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Pharmacy in 1996 and is currently pursuing an MBA from Southern Illinois at Edwardsville. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to discuss this with us today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here this afternoon. And what a day to do this discussion on. The FDA is meeting to make the decision, and hopefully they make this decision today and vaccine starts arriving by Monday in some of our local health departments.
So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation list of questions. Now, our questions and conversations are going to follow similar themes to our other sessions. We're going to just talk about some lessons learned and current strategies. We're going to talk about the enormous workforce requirements and preparations that have been conducted and are in place now moving forward. We're going to touch on the need for equitable access and what's being done there. And then we'll also talk about misinformation and communication strategies, as well as working with various stakeholders. So there's a lot that we're going to talk about today, and then we're going to definitely conclude with some advice moving forward for our global audience. So let's go ahead and jump to the first question. The first question is, what have we learned thus far from the current and previous pandemics and vaccines that will prepare us for the COVID-19 vaccine?
Okay. The one thing I know for sure that I've learned from this pandemic is that the information is changing on a daily basis. We started planning here at the University of Chicago months ago, And what we planned even a week or two ago has changed today. As I was preparing for this webinar, the information I had written down is completely changed from last week. So that's the one thing I learned from this pandemic. The other thing that I learned about it, it's being handled much differently. So, you know, when I think about other type of pandemics, I compare it to the H1N1 that happened in the 2000s, and I was involved in that. And obviously it wasn't as widespread or devastation as we're seeing with COVID, but the process was much different. And being here at the Academic Medical Center, months ago, we knew we needed to start planning. The way that the new technology of the virus, the way it, or the vaccine, of how it's stored, we knew months ago we had to start getting the equipment that's needed. So like the Pfizer product has to be kept at a -80. So we had to get a deep freezer in. It's not something that's easily accessible. So we knew months ago that we had to get that. The Madera product has to be kept frozen too, but at a different temperature. So we knew that process had to be different. Also around vaccinations, anytime there's a new vaccine, your staff has to be trained on that. So we had to create all the training materials to train our pharmacists, our nurses, our physicians. The other thing that the pandemic has created is a shortage of staffing, not only from staff being positive with COVID, just that overall some people are exiting the profession. So as this vaccine comes out, we have to use our current resources. We can't hire new. We have positions posted that it's very difficult to fill those positions. So it's basically all hands on deck. We're using the phrase, it takes a village. As we started the planning, it's not pharmacy that owns it. It's not nursing or physicians, but it's all of us coming together to make the plans for this. And we have different work streams, we had to make a decision. Are we doing the vaccine in the clinics? Are we building a separate clinic? So we built a separate clinic that just will handle COVID. Then we had to find the resources to do that. What kind of supplies do we need? What kind of staffing do we need? What kind of training do we need? What's the IT lift around that? So we have different work streams. And even just receiving the vaccine, it's coming in on dry ice. Who receives that? How fast we have to put it away? We had to create a policy, even how to handle dry ice. You just can't use your bare hands. You have to have big gloves on. You need to have goggles on. So we looked at all the different pieces, and I think on a daily basis for the last 2 or 3 months, there's at least 2 or 3 phone calls a day just discussing the planning around it and the different work streams. So that's the one difference with this pandemic that I have not seen with any other type of pandemic we have, but I don't think most of us have lived through any significant pandemic as this. And I compare it to H1N1 because I know we received that from the government, and then we started vaccinating, and that kind of just disseminated very quickly. But this is a little bit different.
So the distinction that you made too with the preparing earlier, thinking that you need to start as soon as possible with the preparations, but then things are also constantly changing. Was there also that expectation that yes, although we're going to prepare months in advance, that there are going to be changes and we're just going to adapt to that? Or was there continued frustration every time something changed? I mean, did you feel like it was still necessary, even though it looks different now than what it was maybe 3-4 months ago?
Yeah, I think we all started this process knowing that it would change. So we knew what we knew that day, but we knew what we knew that day might be different the next day. And we knew by the time we would go live, it would be completely different. But we wanted to get all our ideas out there and have different, plan A, plan B, plan C. So we kind of thought about different scenarios that can possibly happen. And we knew which levers we had to pull based on that plan. So the team knew that things were going to change, and we knew things were that we had to be open to that. And as we were making these plans, we were actually communicating to our entire workforce. So they understood what was coming, that we weren't sitting by, because you see a lot of stuff on the media. So we wanted to make sure that as an organization, our team members knew that we're working on a plan, that it's changing. And we started feeding them information as we knew stuff. And this is kind of our thought process. And even things that we announced to all our entire staff changed. Initially, we knew that the vaccine would go to frontline workers. So that would be our staff. And we have 14,000 employees. We had to think about how we were going to give it to the 14,000 employees. Who's first? Do we have them sign up for it? the process of identifying employees, what we thought about a month ago has completely changed. So it's, obviously being offered to all employees, but we have them in waves, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, based on their exposure to patients. So if you're frontline, 100%, you're wave 1. If you're kind of in between, because we have some people that are working from home that have limited patient contact, they're wave 2. And then we have a group of people that completely work at home and have no patient contact, so they're wave 3, and then they're going to be randomized. But our thought process a couple of weeks ago was completely different. So we're very, very transparent with our staff to let them know that this is very fluid, changing every day. But as things change, we will let them know. We even had, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had twice a week town hall meetings with all our senior leadership, with open to all employees to listen to where we're at and answer any questions they have. We actually have another one tomorrow. But then we've also given all leadership, managers and above, talking points and FAQs, and we expect in daily huddles, this is a daily conversation. And as things change, we're updating those talking points so that the staff is very aware what's happening, what the process is, so they can make an educated decision if they want to get the vaccine or not. But literally every day it's talked to in every huddle with every employee, so they're aware of it.
Very nice. So I think also just to take home from that question too, with regards to lessons learned, so many of them, although we look at other pandemics or other vaccine initiatives, those are going to look very different. But even COVID itself, in terms of the pandemic and what we've had to do, has looked very different, and being able to be very flexible, like you said. And there's several frameworks that you guys seem to have set up. Communication, one seems very, very important, that you guys recognized very early on, and to your point that you mentioned about daily conversations. And so we will talk about communication in a little bit more detail later. But you had mentioned that you set up different policies or plans as you progress throughout the months. Are there any specific ones? Are there several that now you've set up specifically for the administration of the vaccine or distribution that that are just kind of like ready to go for like Monday? Or are you also quickly adapting those based off of the information? Or is that also always a continuous process?
Yeah, it's a continuous process, but I think the process or the workflow is pretty much established. So we've actually taken an old unit that wasn't being used, and we converted it to a vaccine clinic. The room is built out to have 8 different rooms. We decided that the vaccinators would be paired up. So one would be giving the vaccine and one would be drawing up and doing all the documentation. So we have them in pairs. We want the pairs, our goal is to have the pairs both be able to vaccinate. But depending on staffing, one might be a vaccinator and one might be someone who cannot vaccinate but can support with the drawing up and the documentation. But we're hoping that they're paired together, that they're both vaccinators so they can rotate. We have education for both the Pfizer product and the Moderna product. So if you think about it right now, today the FDA is meeting on the Pfizer product. A week from now, which I think is the 17th, they'll be meeting on the Moderna product. So we don't know if we'll have both or we'll have one or the, so we're training on both, and they're different storage requirements and different process. We do know that we're only going to take enough vaccine and thaw it out based on how many employees are signed up for that day. And we're going to do it in batches, because it takes about 3 hours for the Pfizer vaccine to thaw out. And so we're only going to take out enough for 2 or 3 hours. And then we're just going to keep on doing it because we want to make sure that we're not wasting any vaccine. So we know that for sure. We're not going to draw it up until that actual person's in the room, so we don't waste any. Like the Pfizer product, once it's out and thawed out, it only has a shelf life of 5 hours. The Moderna, I think, is 12 hours. So we're being very aware of how long we leave that product out. The one advantage that we had is that we were part of the studies to test those vaccines. So we are very aware of the workflow, the process, what works well. So we're taking a lot of the learnings from those studies and implementing it in that clinic so that we follow the same process. And that's kind of where we built a lot of the the reference guides, the study. We have videos of how to, like the Pfizer product has to be reconstituted and how do you reconstitute that. I know the CDC website has a lot of training modules for nurses and pharmacists to do. The other thing that we did as part of the beginning of this, a lot of our pharmacists don't do vaccinations. They learn this in pharmacy school, but they're clinicians. They work on the floors, they work in ambulatory clinics, they don't do vaccinations. And a lot of them have let their CPR that's required expire. So we've been on this mass campaign of getting them all ready to participate in this. So the clinic is going to be managed by both nursing and pharmacists and physicians. But it is like again, I said, takes a village. But the process flow is that, and as an employee is identified to be eligible, they'll receive an email in MyChart, they'll sign up in MyChart, they'll come to the clinic on their scheduled date. As soon as they get the vaccine, it's automatically going to schedule their second dose, which will be in 21 days for the Pfizer product and 28 days for the Moderna product. All that we know is in place and is set to go. We're actually going to do a day in the life tomorrow. So we're going to do a mock simulation tomorrow just to make sure that everyone that's working in that clinic is aware. And we have different scenarios where even, I think on the news yesterday reported that 2 individuals had an anaphylactic reaction. So we're actually going to do that scenario so everybody knows where the rescue meds are and how that process goes. And so I think the workflow is pretty much established. I think it's more of the unknown is how much we're going to get, how fast we're going to get it. We built the clinic to where we can do 1,000 vaccines a day. So that was our goal. I don't think we're going to get that much vaccine next week. I think we're anticipating anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. And if we could do 1,000 a day, we'll be out of business in 2 days. So it's kind of our thought process. But our goal is if we can do more, we'll get more. So that our goal is that we can get through our employees very quickly. So then we can go on to the next wave of individuals that are identified by the health department that can receive it.
So that takes me to the next question about, so when you're saying 1,000 a day, and then that's say starting Monday, if we get it on Monday, but then after 21 days for the Pfizer one, you're going to have to vaccinate the initial 1,000 that had it on that Monday, and then continue, and then you're going to vaccinate new. Are you still taking into account that the second dose within that 1,000, or are those new vaccination or new individuals?
So
because of workforce, we're thinking workforce basically doubles after 3 weeks, right? Or the workload.
And the volume is going to double.
The volume, yeah.
So really the way the control of vaccine is coming is from the health department. So I don't know if I shared it at all, but the CDC is actually, Pfizer is sending it to the local health department. So University of Chicago falls in Chicago, so we're getting it from the Chicago Health Department. We have a sister hospital that falls out of Chicago. They're getting it from the Illinois Health Department. So again, 2 different processes. We've been told, so one question was, if I get 2,000 doses, do I need to give 1,000 and keep 1,000 aside for the second dose? They said, absolutely not. If you get 1,000, you will get 1,000 in 3 weeks to give to those employees or those patients that received their first dose. So they said, you don't have to split and kind of keep them in half. We'll see how that process works. They told us the more you vaccinate, you probably will get more product. They even said on the call last week with the Department of Public Health that if you get 1,000 doses and you still have 500 the second week, you may not get a second shipment. You have to report into iCares every day so they can see how much you're using, so they can anticipate, like if you go through your 2,000 this week, you'll have another shipment next week. The reason that we're immediately scheduling the follow-up is one, the follow-up for them, but also for our schedule. So we know we already have 1,000. If we give 2,000 doses next week, we know in 3 weeks we have another 2,000 doses that we have to give. And if we're getting more vaccine than the 2,000 doses, then we can schedule new. But if we only consistently get this 2,000 each week, 1 week will be new, and then eventually some will be new, some will be refill, you'll be alternating. So there's still a lot of unknown, and that's the one piece that we can't confidently say that at some point it'll be a mixture of new and refill kind of thinking, or that second dose. But the health departments did say, if you give 1,000 this week, in 3 weeks, you will get another 1,000 to give their second dose. But that might only be that you do that week, enough for the second dose. But there was a lot of questions of, do we need to split the vaccine up? Like, if I get 1,000, do I keep 500 and give 500? And they said, no, you shouldn't have to do that. And plus, we can see if the health department starts saying, well, we can give you 4,000, then we know we can ramp up the number of employees to sign up. And we told employees, you have to respond very quickly. So as you get that email that you're eligible to get the vaccine, I think they're only giving them 48 hours to sign up for their appointment, because if they don't sign up, then we're moving to the next employee. Because the health departments really did say, the faster you use the vaccine, the more that we can give you, that we know that you're going to use up. I know there's been some questions, like even on the Illinois side, they based the decision of the number of COVID cases and I think deaths of who was going to get it, and not so much based on the number of hospitals or healthcare workers, because the first wave is really those frontline healthcare workers. So I think some of the decisions will change as this process gets going, really on the distribution side of who gets what, how much you're going to get. That's the one piece right now that is still kind of up in the air for us. We're ready to go live on Tuesday. So we figured if the FDA approves today, by the time it shipped and gets delivered, we're expecting that, because if it goes to the health department, comes to us, we're ready to go Tuesday. And we know if we don't have it on Tuesday, those staff will just go back to the regular day work and then come back on Wednesday to get the vaccine.
So that touches a little bit on the tracking system for the supply of the vaccine, kind of the flow of that. What systems are also in place for reporting any adverse events or any type of efficacy data or effectiveness data after we start vaccinating that you're aware of? Is it a similar system? Is it a separate one? Is it as quick in terms of being able to submit and know that data?
Yeah, so the FDA and the CDC work together to create an app. I think it's called VSafe. So as an individual receives the vaccine, they will receive an information sheet of how to sign up for VSafe. And it's an actual smartphone app to track your symptoms and track that. And it also will remind you that you need your second dose. So basically they want you to, if I receive my vaccine today, they want me to go on VSafe to say, I got my vaccine today. They want you to track if you're having any sort of adverse events. What are they? Most common ones are headaches, some nausea, diarrhea, I think, and fever. They want to track it on that VSafe. But it also will tell that individual you're due for your second dose. It's 21 days or 28 days. There's still the vaccine adverse reporting website that's on the FDA that they want us to use, but they're really encouraging to use this VSafe. From a tracking of giving vaccine, they want on a daily basis us to report into Kaakeh, which is the Illinois website around immunizations, and I'm sure each state has the same thing, but at the end of the day, we actually have to send a file to them of who received it and how much we gave.
And do you think, we had asked this a little bit with Michael as well, but do you think we're going to start seeing these types of systems for other vaccines in terms of how quick or using these apps or this kind of connectedness, or is it just because it's a pandemic related type of?
I think, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a great idea because when I was reading this, the VSafe, I think that's great because a lot of times we give a vaccine and patient leaves, and when you're trying to encourage a patient, especially around flu, you're trying to get a patient to get a flu shot and they always say, oh, I got the flu from the flu shot. Well, no, that you don't really get the flu from the flu shots. But I think if they had a way for the general public to kind of document, I think it would help tremendously. And this might be the wave of the future that vaccines are tracked this way. It might be a great way to track vaccination records because a lot of times people don't know that I have a tetanus shot, did I not, did I get a pneumonia shot? So it might be another great way for the general public just to track their regular vaccines. I think the one thing with this is you got to realize like the Pfizer and Moderna product really only has been in trial phase for 2 and 3 months, right? So there's still a lot of unknowns. So this is a great way to kind of track in the moment what's happening as this goes out to the masses. And so they can really see and really react quickly, because there might be something that they don't know. And they might start, as people are reporting, maybe all of a sudden, like thousands of people are reporting some side effect that we weren't aware of. So we can get that information out to the public. So I think it's a great way to document that, because my concern as I was reading through some of the questions was, how are we going to keep all this data, and how are we going to get it to the FDA? So the fact that they have this app, I think it's a great technology to really track side effects for something that came out very quickly, and to keep the public aware, like, hey, we're in 3 weeks in and we're still seeing the same trends. Because as you talk to the general population, I'm getting a feeling like only 50% will want it, right? So we really have to figure out a way to really be that ambassador to encourage people to get it. But I think as more information comes out around the safety and efficacy of it, I think that will increase the number of people that want to get it.
I agree. So as you also set up these campaigns and these initiatives and these processes, often many people that do create these types of processes think about outcome metrics and like determining, well, is it successful, is it not? How do you begin to think about that? What outcome metrics can we use as we think to measure the success of any initiative that we're creating around vaccination?
Yeah, so I looked at what we're doing. Really, right now, there's not a lot that we have put in place. So some of the things that we're measuring is how many employees are getting it, how many employees are not getting it, what are some of the side effects that our employees are reporting. And then also, I think the other thing we have to look at is, if I received it on December 15th, do I not get COVID? What is, and how far out is that? So we're really going to be monitoring which of our employees, because we do track all our employees that get COVID. So we will be able to compare that to who received the vaccine, and did they get their second dose, and did they get COVID or not? So that really is something that we're going to be measuring long term, is really the administration rate of who's getting it. And then if those people who received it, did they get COVID? Because right now, the other thing is that because the vaccine has only been studied for 2 to 3 months, we don't know how long that immunization is going to last. So that's really what we're trying to get from this data. Where are we at in 2 months? Where are we at 3 months and 4 months? Right now, the rule of thumb is if you had COVID, you really have that immunity for about 90 days, because we have cases that patients after 90 days have got COVID again. So we will really need to figure out how long are you have immunity with the vaccine. We don't know right now. So this is another thing that we're hoping to gain and measure to compare. And because we have a very controlled environment that we track all our employees that have COVID, we'll be able to say this employee received vaccine on December 15th, and by April, whatever, they're still they haven't caught COVID, or maybe they have. So we can start looking at some of that data.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that's a true gap in the knowledge that we have right now about these vaccines. So thinking ahead for that and laying the infrastructure to say, hey, this is something we should track, and then having that, because you don't want to come April and be like, oh, I wish we started thinking about that. But I think that ability, and like you said, you've already have a system in place because you guys track whether they're positive. But for the audience that's listening that hasn't thought about that, these are very important to kind of think about as you implement yours. So I do want to start shifting a little bit and talk more about the workforce. You did talk about some of the structure that you have in terms of the processes, how you're going to utilize your workforce, both pharmacists and nurses, as well as potentially others that are trained to assist with that. But workforce burnout remains a significant challenge in healthcare, and particularly in a pandemic. So can you talk about some strategies that exist that you guys have been doing to either prevent, manage, or resolve some burnout?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, this has been a challenge since the beginning of the pandemic, is really that burnout, especially the individuals that are caring for COVID patients. But then you look at the regular normal workforce, I could think of different incidences that have occurred over the last 7 to 8 months, where we've had nursing the whole floor get wiped out because someone had COVID and exposed the team. And then there's a nursing shortage. So it's really hard to get people to fill in those shifts. So we're asking people to work double shifts or come in on their days off. And even on the pharmacy side, we had the same thing. So underneath me, I have an outpatient pharmacy. And even early on, we had an employee test positive and exposed the whole staff. And we can't shut down operations. So we pulled people from other areas to come in to help and manage that. So, and I think the other thing too is, we were used to being on site. So there's a lot of individuals that work from home, and there was a lot of individuals that were excited to work from home, but after a month realized I'm missing something, missing, that contact with other team members. So we do a lot of things through Zoom. We do a lot of huddles. So we make sure that depending on the team, we're either doing in-person huddles or virtual huddles. Anyone that's working from home, we rotate in. As an organization, we have a lot of webinars that we're offering around burnout, avenues where people can come and talk about how they're feeling. We're asking all managers to consistently reach out to team members to make sure that how they're doing, check on them and their family, etc. We also have employee assistant program that we encourage employees that if they're having difficulty could reach out and they can give them the support. Unfortunately, the shortage continues. And I was told recently that some of the nurses are leaving because some of the states that border us that have a higher shortage are offering higher dollar amounts to have them come over and work for them. But even there's days where we're above our capacity and we're all hands on deck to try to get patients discharged and get patients from the ED to get admitted. But I think we all see what's happening on the news lately in the United States, especially we're seeing that surge after Thanksgiving, and we're seeing stories where patients are sitting in an ED for a couple days on end waiting for a room. So unfortunately, the biggest thing I'm asking people is continue to wear masks. The other thing that we did around our workforce that I think is also impacting them emotionally is like during Thanksgiving week, we did a whole campaign a week before, actually weeks before, not to have Thanksgiving with your family. Do not travel. And we did this every day in huddle. So, most of the employees complied. And you think about, this is usually a break from work is spending time with family and friends. And we're telling them, please don't spend time with family and friends. And we're going through that same campaign for Christmas because we're really worried. Yeah, we have vaccine coming out next week. It's going to take a while before we see that impact. And what we're seeing right now, and they keep on saying we haven't even seen the true impact from Thanksgiving. That might happen around Christmas. And then we see a surge then, and then we're going to have a bigger surge come January. So I'm excited that the vaccine's coming out. I just think it's going to be a trickle effect because even in Illinois, we were told we're only getting 100,000 doses next week. That's just like a drop in the bucket. Yeah. And then how fast are we going to continue to get that? Then the other thing is that we're asking healthcare workers that are already burnt out to volunteer their time to come and help vaccinate. So one of the things that we did to help staff this clinic is we sent out a survey last week and asked for people to sign up for shifts to come and help vaccinate. And we did work with some managers to kind of force people into the schedule, but we also asked for volunteers because we felt there's enough healthcare workers that want to put an end to this and are willing to work after their shift or on days that they're off to come help. And I don't know if I shared this, but our clinic is built to do 1,000 doses a day. So we need a lot of staff to be able to do that. Oh, yeah. And we're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. So it does take a lot of staff to be able to do that. So we know our employees are on that verge of burnout, but we're there to support one another. And as I talk to my managers, I tell my managers, really assess your team. And if we feel someone needs some time, we need to have them walk away. We need them to have like a mental break so that it's not good to keep on pushing on them.
Yeah. So we're going to transition right now real quick to the topic of equitable access. Everyone keeps talking about ensuring equitable access, but how can we ensure that the populations with the highest risk and those that are disproportionately affected by COVID-19 receive the vaccine?
So the other fortunate thing that we did as part of being in the trial is part of the trials, we received trailers. And we have those trailers. One is set in a parking lot of a federal qualified health center. So again, serving underinsured, non-insured and patients. And then we have them strategically placed in other underserved communities. And the idea is once the trial is done, is that those trailers will be converted into vaccination trailers. So they will still be in those underserved communities, and we will still staff it and provide vaccine to them. The thought process is once we get the okay to vaccinate the general population, we will use those trailers to be in those underserved communities, because a lot of times, not only are they underserved, there's no resources. Really, there's no physician's office, there's no hospitals, there's nothing. So those trailers will work as that community's vaccination center. And right now, I think we have 3. That right now I think we're doing one of the trials in, but they will convert to that. The other discussion that we had is because we can give the vaccines to 65 and older that are in like long-term care facilities. And there's some long-term care facilities that we partner with and we work with today. So the thought process is, can we go there and vaccinate their staff and the patients there? So we're working with some of those that are within our community. And for individuals that are on this call, University of Chicago is on the south side of Chicago, which is right in the heart of underserved communities. And that's our mission. And we want to make sure that we continue to serve them. And then we also have a sister hospital that's even further south of us that's also in an underserved community. So their mission is the same thing. So we know as we get that green light from the CDC that we can do the general population. Our goal is that all our patients and patients that we serve in these communities, that we're there as a solution and being to provide that vaccine.
Yeah, I like that how it also touches on our initial point about preparing ahead, that although, right now the first phase is going to be healthcare providers, high-risk patients, but then starting to think it's not too early to even start thinking about when we, like you said, exactly, when you get the green light to administer it to specific populations, that you are ready. And so that is, I think, a very good take-home point with that as well.
Just as an example of that, like today we had a couple emails go back and forth. We're planning to start buying dry ice. So for us to have the vaccine go to those trailers, we don't have that -80 deep freezer in those trailers. So we're going to have to transport the vaccine that we get to the main campus to those trailers on dry ice. So we already have that in the plans. And, our supply chain asked, well, when do you want to start ordering it? We're like, maybe February. We're not 100% sure, but we already want that in place to say that starting this day, we need dry ice to be delivered to us on a daily basis so that we can take vaccine from the main campus being delivered here to those ancillary sites. So again, we're thinking ahead. So we're set for here. Now we need to start planning, okay, when we can have this next phase, are we ready to do that?
Yeah, that's great. So the next question goes more towards information communication strategies, now thinking about the general public and building confidence there. How do you begin to address the obstacles of low vaccination confidence, vaccine hesitation, the anti-vaccine movement, and any misinformation that's out there that's between basically vaccination and also making, and the patients getting the vaccine and kind of that element of public trust and, and basically ensuring the success of these initiatives?
Yeah, we actually had to start that with our own employees. So about 2 weeks ago, we started a campaign where we're encouraging our employees to get the vaccination. And we're asking other employees to be an ambassador of that. We created FAQ sheets. We want employees to make a educated decision to get it. We have our senior leadership going on town halls and huddles explaining why they're getting it. We have our infectious disease doctors explaining why they're going to get the vaccine. So we really want to make sure that we get our employees vaccinated. And then we want to use them to be ambassadors within the community. We need people to start sharing that message, why I got vaccinated, and sharing the fact sheet. And we have fact sheets that we can give to patients today if they want to start thinking about it. If they think there's risk factors of maybe someone's pregnant or some other underlying condition that they have. So we're really encouraging our own employees to be the ambassadors for that in the community. For years, being in a community pharmacy, I've always saw the challenges around just getting flu shots, because I compared this to getting a flu shot. And, patients would always say, oh, I get the flu, or I've never had it. I don't believe in it. But we're really going to have to do that education, and a constant education and reminder. But I told my employees, as you get it, you need to be the ambassador. The other thing we're doing here is we're asking employees, once they get the vaccine, if they're willing to we're doing like a media blitz. So we're going to take little segments of people who got it, why they got it, how do they feel? And we're creating marketing around that so that we can use that marketing as we go in the community to show patients that it's safe to get and why we get it. It's been a sad year. I mean, I'm sure everyone has a loved one that has had it or has passed away from it. So we need to stop it. This is the only way it's going to stop, or we're going to continue to live the way that we're living. So it's really about having that a kind of like brand ambassador out there, talking about why they got the vaccine and how it made them feel, and the safety around it.
Yeah, that's great, because it's in parallel a lot with what Michael was saying earlier too in the webinar series about how healthcare professionals are truly now going to be the main ambassadors, since they're going to be the first. And then they have such a wonderful opportunity, because not only will they get the vaccine first, but they speak to patients, right? Mm-hmm. So being very intentional, how are we actually talking to that, is going to do a lot towards building that public trust. So I really agree as well. So we are starting to get questions. So we do have one, we just have two more quick questions before we open it up to audience questions. So if you do have a question, please submit it in the Q&A box now, as we kind of finalize the conversation here. Real quick, I just wanted to, because you mentioned various different stakeholders that you work with within the health system to create these initiatives, to implement them, to begin the whole process in the workforce. There's various different stakeholders, be it different disciplines, different backgrounds, from supply chain all the way to physician groups. How do you have any recommendations how to effectively communicate across various different stakeholders, how you work together that have really helped you create better initiatives?
Yeah, so the one fortunate thing here at University of Chicago, we have a project management office. So anytime we have a big initiative, we actually get a project manager on the program, and they bring in all the disciplinaries. And we're very familiar with the process. It can go from pharmacy to nursing, from security to environmental services, facilities, plant. And we're very aware of the process. We also have an operations excellence department, which is kind of a lean program that help with all the initiatives to make sure the workflow is right. And we're used to working together. And as that project lead, usually have an executive owner of that project, and they kind of they start the project of sharing what's the purpose, what's our vision. And then everyone is assigned jobs, and everyone is on different work streams. So, this project alone, I think, has 4 or 5 different work streams, one from building out the space to staffing to selection of who's going to get the vaccine first. But here at University of Chicago, we're very fortunate to have this project management office that kind of coordinates it all for us. And everyone is used to it. And you get assigned to that project, and you could have 20 or 30 different people from different disciplines on there, and we're all working together, and we all know who's doing what, and it's around that accountability. We have a SharePoint site, we know who has what, and we meet sometimes every day. And if people are not getting their work done, people can see that. But we all kind of step up anytime any initiative like this. And even the space that we identified to have this vaccine clinic in, it was up and built in a week. because we pulled in the right resources and everybody was rolling up their sleeves and did what they needed to do to get it up and running. And we're actually going to do the day in the life tomorrow and we'll be ready to give vaccine next week. So I think at other organizations, it's really having someone who is that lead of that project to pull in all the resources, but you really have to give that vision. I don't think this was a hard sell because we all see what we're living and knew the importance of this. Time frame was crucial. You know, when Pfizer announced that they were going to submit FDA to get FDA approval, we were thinking we could have possibly had vaccine by December 1st. And we really only had like a 2-week time frame to get everything up and running. So we had this 2-week time frame in mind, from IT to the space to policies to staffing. And it was over Thanksgiving, a holiday week, but we got it all done. But it's really around that call to action, get everybody on board to get everything up and running.
Yeah, I liked it. As you were talking, I kept thinking, I'm like, okay, set a lead, make sure expectations are very clear, hold accountability. But then, like you said, ultimately too, you have that collective vision and that collective goal, which allowed you guys to act very, very quickly towards that. So now the final question before we open up to Q&A, is there any advice that you would give those within kind of the public health space or health systems? We have a very diverse kind of global audience, but any advice as they start to think about how they're preparing and working towards how they're preparing for this vaccine?
I think as you start preparing for this vaccine, really first learning about each of the vaccines and what's unique about those, because that kind of where we started, like how we're going to bring all this in, and thinking about, you know, we had to think about where we were going to do the vaccine. We're going to do in regular clinics. We're going to separate it. What staffing was going to be involved? What did we need from a supply chain to be able to bring the vaccine in? So we needed that freezers. One of the things as you get the vaccine, they supply you all the supplies with it. So we didn't really need that, but we have that as backup because we said, well, maybe we're not going to get the supplies. So we have that. Who are the key people that need to be involved to get this executed and up and running? You really need a lead. Who's going to take lead? And I think at the beginning, everyone was assuming someone else was taking lead to kind of get this up and running. And then finally to someone, you know, it actually was the VP of pharmacy that stepped up and got all this started because we had to apply with the local health department that, yes, we want the vaccine and working with them in the process. So if you haven't started it, and if you want to do this, you really need to figure out with your local health department of what you need to do to be on board. But really figuring out who are the key people that have to be involved, who's the right decision makers, and really understanding the vaccine. And then what IT infrastructure do you need? How are you going to identify employees? How are you going to get them in? How are you going to track that vaccine? What is your state requirement of reporting back to the state? So those are some key things that I think stakeholders really need to think about. It's really around the communication, who are the key people, and what are the plans you need to be able to do to execute it at your organization. And then having and making sure people understand that like your regular day job is on hold because this is like a top priority to get this in place.
Yes, those are extremely valuable advice. Thank you. That was wonderful. Okay, so we're just going to open it up to some questions that we've received in the Q&A box. The first one states, where may we start in an effort to contribute to this team effort as a licensed pharmacist looking for work?
So in the state of Illinois, it depends on where you're at. I'm not sure where the question is coming from. I'm on another task force. So separate from University of Chicago, in Illinois, the pharmacy schools and some of the state associations have set up a task force, and they have a campaign to get pharmacists to sign up to immunize. So as they start going to some of the rural areas or some of the areas of where just the general population is, they're looking for pharmacists. So in Illinois, there is a website that we have for pharmacists to sign up if they want to be part of the state initiative around immunizations. I'm not sure if every state is doing this. I'm assuming they are, but ours it's key leaders from pharmacy schools. It's Illinois Pharmacists Association involved. A lot of the chains are part of it. I'm on it from a state board of pharmacy perspective. So I would look at your local state associations and they on their website should have a link for you to sign up to volunteer to be part of the vaccination.
That's awesome. Great recommendation. So next question is, what percentage of pharmacy personnel are vaccinating compared to nursing personnel?
What percent? About 50-50. Actually, initially when we started planning the scheduling, it was more heavily pharmacists. We do have some pharmacists that are in clinical roles that we thought that we can pull because they're not really in operation roles, so we thought they can help. The other thought we were going to use pharmacy students. The issue is with pharmacy students, they'll be done with their rotations for their Christmas or holiday break in a week. So we knew we couldn't rely on them completely. So we were going to use them. We were also going to use medical students, but that's the same challenge. They're all going on for their holiday break, so we can't count on them to be here for that initial. But as they come back from their breaks, we're going to plan to use them in January and February. But it's really about a 50-50 mix of pharmacists and nursing staff to run that clinic.
We also have we have a question regarding if any of the employees have refused to be vaccinated, and if so, what was the reason given?
So I started asking employees why. So I started asking employees just straight out, are you interested in the vaccine or not? And it's about a 50-50 mix right now. And some of the concerns that we've been hearing is one employee was pregnant, so she feels that there's not enough data around pregnancy. A lot of them say there's not enough data, and it's still like the mRNA technology that they're using for the Pfizer Moderna. It's not enough information out there. So that's what some employees feel, that they want to see it tested a little bit longer. That is some of the feedback that I received. We really have our infectious disease doctors out there explaining what it is, why they would do it, why it's safe. But that was the main reason, is they felt there wasn't enough, it hasn't been studied long enough for them to get comfortable. But then I have other employees that rolling up their sleeve, even when we were doing the trial, said, how do I sign up for the trial? I think a lot of us are seeing a lot of patients suffer with it, or seeing the devastation that's happening from it, and they don't want it, and they want to stop the spread. And there's a lot of people that truly believe in vaccines. And so it's a 50-50 mix. Yesterday we were on a call and we did a poll on the Zoom, and 80% said they would get it. So it all depends on the mix, and that the people that were on that call were all pharmacists. And the 20% who said they didn't want to get it, one of them were pregnant, and that was her concern. But in pregnant women, there's a higher risk of not of the vaccine, of getting COVID and complications. So we're really kind of talking that up as well, that they should be getting it. But it's really around, there's not been enough time. That's what a lot of the employees are telling me, that it hasn't studied long enough. That's their concern.
Yeah, I think too, what's particularly interesting about this vaccine is that we already have those that are worried about vaccines in general, that are hesitant, but now on this level is just that it's an mRNA vaccine, it's completely new, the time period, and so how fast it's been approved, all of these elements. And on top of it, we have to also remember that everybody is human, and they've had the stress of the pandemic of the 9 months. And so the stress of associating with making decisions. And when we talked with Catherine too, and she made a great point about even looking at these groups, right? Like, even if you think 50-50, to be careful not to polarize people and put them in these groups, right? That gets back to a lot of our conversation now about the messaging and the communication, because so much of it falls on, are we delivering the right messages? Are we continuously adapting our messages to think you can't keep saying the same message to somebody that's hesitant, right?
Right.
Be in that 50% for the next month, right? You've already realized, and I think we've heard this in this conversation, that you have to adjust those too, where you've said that, there are people, and maybe now it's 80, it might tomorrow go back to like 30, so you're constantly adapting. So that's great to hear in terms of the strategies that you guys are using and talking about. There is another question too regarding the challenges. So we've talked extensively, you guys are planning ahead, thinking about all possible challenges, but are there any challenges that even throughout the months that you guys are thinking about that really still worry you about the vaccination process?
Yeah, I think there's two things that keep me up at night. One is getting the vaccine. You know, as much as the state has said, if you give you this much per week, you'll pretty much get consistent each week. My concern is, will there be logistic problems, you know, that we haven't discovered yet because it hasn't been starting to be shipped yet? Will Pfizer or Moderna have manufacturing issues and it stops? So you got that first dose and right, it's 50% effective. You only get one dose. It's 90% effective. You get the second dose. So is there going to be issues of getting that second dose? Is there going to be logistic issues where we start vaccinating the population and all of a sudden things stop? Is there still unknowns of side effects that maybe we're not aware of and it stops? So I'm hoping not. And I'm hoping that the logistic issues are not there. The other challenge or issue that I'm concerned with is staffing. How long are we going to be able to use our existing staff to do their day job plus this? Or can we, you know, run in certain areas short so that we can have them work the vaccination clinic? Are we truly, if we can do 1,000 a day, do we have enough staff to do that and still do your day-to-day operations and all your clinical stuff? There's still other patients that have to be taken care of. So that's my other concern is how long can we keep employees doing dual roles is another concern. So those are my two things. I think the first one is logistics. We don't truly know that the health departments are saying, no, we got nothing to worry about. But it's that little piece in the back of my mind that says, are we sure? So that's the other thing too about keeping things, being able to adapt. So we're going on what we know today, but we still have in the back of our mind as a plan B. If we're not getting what we need to get each week, we need to make sure that we have that second dose. We really have to make sure anyone that gets that first dose is getting that second dose so we can get them in that 90% range of effectiveness.
Yeah, I like that you said that because as pharmacists, we're programmed for that because we know our supply chains are not perfect for pharmaceutical supply chains because drug shortages we've been having to deal with for so long. And so, yeah, that is always going to be in this underlying concern because, you know, they weren't perfect before a pandemic. Right. So no matter what, they're not going to necessarily always be perfect. But thinking about those and then how you adjust to that is powerful. So we only have about a minute or so. Are there any other closing remarks or final thoughts you'd like to add, Denise?
I think my closing remarks is that I'm encouraging everyone to get the vaccine when you are eligible to get it. And as you get it, really encourage your friends and family to get it. I think as healthcare providers, we are going to be the face of this vaccine to really encourage people to get it. And you kind of see that they're doing that already on the media. You know, when that little lady in, you know, the UK got the vaccine, they went on TV and showed it. In Chicago, they had another woman who was part of the trial. She's going on media and talking about it. So really talk about your experiences. Really, I'm encouraging people to get it. My other thing is if you don't have it, wear a mask. I think the next couple weeks, it will be challenging in the United States. Very concerned about hospital capacity, ICU capacity. But if you are eligible to get that vaccine, please roll up your arm and do it. If you're a healthcare provider and you're willing to help, please go to your local state websites to see. They are looking for people to help with the vaccinations as it gets out to more of the masses. We just have to do it quickly. And just hopefully the drug companies can keep up with the logistics and the supply so that we can do this. I think the general population, if everything goes accordingly, maybe by the second quarter of next year, so around June sometime, we might see it in the general population. But there's a lot of frontline workers and essential workers that it's all going to go through. So I just tell everybody be patient, but when it's your turn, please get the vaccine.
Those are great last remarks. So on behalf of Salus Vitae Group and myself, I would like to thank you, Denise, for joining us today and for sharing your experiences thus far. And we really wish that all the success and that all the initiatives are very successful and that as many people as possible can get immunized or vaccinated in the next coming weeks. So we've had several, so we've already had 3 guest leaders thus far. Tomorrow we'll have our final live webinar. So if you haven't already done so, you can register at salusvitaegroup.com. And we would like to hear any takeaways that you have from the session. So if you do post them, please be sure to tag us at Salus Vitae Group. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next event.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.